The evening wrapped around our little Midwest home like a warm blanket, the kind of late May night that hums with life. I'd cracked the living room windows just enough to let the scent of blooming lilacs drift in, mingling with the faint tang of my iced tea sweating on the coffee table. Outside, cicadas buzzed their endless chorus, a sound I'd grown to love after all these years. Inside, it was just me, sprawled across the couch in a loose cotton sundress, flipping through a gardening magazine. The soft glow of the table lamp spilled amber light over the room, catching the edges of the faded floral curtains and painting everything in a cozy golden haze. It was peaceful, the kind of quiet I'd come to crave after a long day. Then Lucas walked in. My stepson, 18 now, though it's hard to believe, stood in the doorway, his 6'3" frame slouched under a faded flannel shirt. His sandy blonde hair hung messy over his forehead, half hiding those hazel eyes that always seemed to carry a little too much thought. His hands were shoved deep into the pockets of his worn jeans, and the way he shifted his weight, scuffing his boots against the hardwood, told me something was off. He didn't look at me, just stared at the floor like it held all the answers he couldn't find. "Hey, Grace," he mumbled, his voice barely cutting through the cicada hum. I set the magazine down on my lap, the glossy pages crinkling under my fingers, and tilted my head to catch his eye. "Hey, Lucas," I said, keeping my tone soft, inviting. "Something on your mind?" He rocked back on his heels, tugging at the cuffs of his sleeves like he could hide whatever was eating at him. For a long moment, he didn't answer, just stood there, a towering shadow against the warm light. Then, finally, he lifted his gaze, just a flicker, and muttered, "Yeah, can we talk?" I straightened up, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, and patted the cushion beside me. "Come on in, then. You know I'm always here." My heart gave a little tug. Lucas wasn't one to dodge a chat. He'd been spilling his thoughts to me since I married his dad 5 years back. But tonight, he looked different. Smaller somehow. Like a boy again, carrying a weight he didn't know how to name. I patted the couch beside me, the faded fabric cool under my hand, but Lucas didn't move toward it. Instead, he crossed the room and sank into the recliner, his long legs sprawling out as he tugged at the sleeves of his flannel shirt. The lamplight caught the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers twisted the frayed cuff like he was unraveling something inside. He stared at the floor, sandy hair falling into his eyes, and I waited, letting the cicadas fill the silence. Finally, he shifted, his boots scuffing the rug, and muttered, "It's about my girlfriend. We've been talking about, taking things further." His cheeks went pink, a flush creeping up his neck. I set the magazine aside, resting my hands in my lap, and gave him a slow nod. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice steady, calm. "That's a big step. What's on your mind about it?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, and ran a hand through his hair. "I've never, done it," he admitted, barely above a whisper, "and I'm kind of freaking out." His eyes flicked up to mine, then darted away again. "What if I mess up? What if she hates it?" I leaned forward just a touch, resting my elbows on my knees, and let a soft smile curve my lips. "It's okay to be nervous, Lucas. First times are like that for everyone. Just talk to her. Make sure you're both ready. That's what matters most." He frowned, his brow knitting tight. "But what if I'm no good at it? What if she thinks I'm, lame?" His hands clenched into fists on his thighs, and I could see the doubt chewing at him. "It's not about being perfect," I said, my tone warm, reassuring. "It's about being honest with each other. Tell her what you're feeling. Ask what she wants. If you're both comfortable, it'll feel right. And if it doesn't, you stop. Simple as that." He nodded slowly, chewing his lip as he took it in, but his shoulders stayed hunched. "Yeah, I guess," he mumbled. "Thanks, Grace. That helps." A small smile tugged at his mouth, and he finally met my eyes, a flicker of relief there. "Anytime," I said, leaning back with a grin. "You know I've got your back, no judgment. Always." He chuckled, a quiet, shaky sound, and the tension in his frame eased just a bit. "Okay, I'll remember that." And later, as I lay in bed, the house was still, the cicadas a faint hum beyond the window. My sundress hung over the chair, and the sheets felt cool against my skin. Lucas's voice echoed in my head, low, hesitant, spilling his fears. I pictured his broad shoulders, the way he'd fidgeted, that flush on his cheeks. My fingers brushed my stomach, trailing up slow, and my breath hitched as my mind wandered. Him standing there, uncertain, looking to me. A shiver ran through me, warm and wrong all at once. I pressed my hand lower, losing myself in the thought, knowing I shouldn't but unable to stop. Guilt tangled with a strange ache as I drifted off, his name a whisper in the dark. The next day, I was in the kitchen slicing tomatoes for a salad when the front door creaked open. I glanced up, expecting Lucas to stride in with that easy grin of his, maybe kick off his boots and start rattling on about his college classes or some dumb joke he'd heard. But he didn't. He shuffled through the doorway, his flannel shirt hanging loose, hood pulled up over his messy blonde hair like a shield. His boots dragged across the hardwood, a slow scrape that set my nerves on edge. He didn't look at me, not a glance, just kept his eyes on the floor and moved past, a shadow slipping down the hall. A moment later, his bedroom door clicked shut, soft but final. I stood there, knife poised over the cutting board, staring after him. My chest tightened. I wanted to call out, "Lucas, you okay?" But something stopped me. The way he'd moved, shoulders slumped, head down, wasn't just tired, it was heavy, hollow, like he was carrying a weight I couldn't see. The days blurred into a week and it didn't get better. He'd leave for college at dawn, the screen door banging behind him before I'd even poured my coffee. By dusk, he'd come back, same as before, silent, head low, straight to his room. I'd hear faint guitar strums leaking through the walls, the low twang of chords he used to play loud and proud. Now it was muffled, like he didn't want me to know he was there. Dinner sat cold on the table every night. He didn't come out, not once. Not for food, not to talk, not for anything. I tried reaching him a couple times, knocked on his door one evening, the wood cool under my knuckles, and called, "Lucas, want some tea? I've got that peppermint you like." A pause, then a flat, "Not now, Grace," from the other side. Another night, I leaned against the frame and said, "I'm here if you need me, okay?" His voice came back, dull as dishwater. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. I could feel it in the air, thick and unsettled. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Kids his age get moody, right? Maybe a rough day, a fight with his girlfriend. But as the silence stretched on, that excuse wore thin. He'd always been full of life, filling the house with his laugh, his stories. Now he was a ghost, folding himself into the shadows like he wanted to disappear. My hands itched to fix it, to pull him back from whatever edge he was teetering on. Standing there in this kitchen, the tomato juice staining my fingers red, I couldn't shake the gnawing ache. Something was wrong, really wrong, and I wasn't about to let it swallow him whole without a fight. I couldn't take it anymore. After another dinner went cold on the table, I marched down the hall, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest as I stopped outside Lucas's door. The faint strum of his guitar had faded, leaving only a heavy stillness. I took a deep breath, the lilac scent from the open windows lingering in my lungs, and knocked softly. "Lucas," I called, my voice gentle but firm. "Can I come in?" A long pause stretched out, then his muffled voice drifted through the wood. "Yeah." I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was a cave, curtains drawn tight, a single lamp spilling weak light across the cluttered desk and unmade bed. Lucas lay sprawled on the mattress, staring up at the ceiling, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. His flannel shirt was wrinkled, sleeves shoved up to his elbows, and his boots sat kicked off in a heap by the wall. I eased onto the edge of the bed, the springs creaking under me, and brushed my fingers against his arm. "Hey," I said softly. "You've been quiet lately. I'm worried about you." He didn't move at first, just kept his eyes on the ceiling, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Then, slow as molasses, he turned his head. His hazel eyes were red-rimmed, glassy with something raw that made my throat tighten. "I'm fine," he muttered, voice hoarse, barely convincing himself. I shook my head, my hand resting light on his arm. "No, you're not. I know you're not. Talk to me, Lucas. Please." The silence hung heavy, broken only by the faint tick of the clock on his nightstand. His jaw clenched, like he was fighting to keep it all locked inside. Then he took a shuddering breath and looked at me, his gaze flickering with pain. "It's stupid," he said, so quiet I almost missed it. "It's not stupid," I said firmly, squeezing his arm. "Whatever it is, it's hurting you. I want to help, but I can't if you don't tell me." He hesitated, his fists tightening until his knuckles went white. Then the words spilled out, trembling and rough. "It's about my girlfriend. We were gonna do it." He swallowed hard, cheeks flushing red. "It started fine, kissing, touching, all that. Felt good, but then—" He trailed off, his face twisting with shame. "But then what?" I prompted, keeping my voice gentle, steady. He took another shaky breath, his voice dropping to a whisper. "When she saw me without my jeans, she freaked out, said I was too big, couldn't handle it, just stopped." He looked away, his hands unclenching to scrub at his face. "She tried. With her mouth instead, but she got tired after a while. Didn't work, and now she's telling everyone at college. Her friends, my friends, they're all laughing, calling me a freak like I'm broken or something." The words landed like stones, heavy and cruel. My chest ached, a surge of anger flaring up for him. How could she do that? I reached out, turning his face back to mine with a gentle hand. "Lucas," I said, my tone sharp with conviction, "there is nothing wrong with you. Nothing at all." His eyes brimmed with tears, doubt clouding them. "Then why does it feel like there is? Why is everyone saying it?" I sighed, my mind racing for the right thing to say. "Listen to me. You're not broken. You're not a freak. You're unique, special even. Different, sure, but in the best way. Anyone who thinks otherwise is just small-minded." He didn't look convinced, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand. "I don't know what to do, Grace. I feel so lost." I pulled him into a hug, wrapping my arms tight around his trembling frame. "You're not alone, Lucas. I'm here. We'll figure this out together, whatever it takes." He clung to me, and I felt a fierce, protective love settle in my bones. I'd get him through this no matter what. The next evening I decided to pull out all the stops. The kitchen glowed warm under the soft flicker of candles I'd scattered across the counter, their light dancing off the chipped white plates I'd set out. I'd made Lucas's favorite, grilled cheese with thick slices of cheddar oozing over the edges, paired with a steaming bowl of tomato soup that filled the air with a tangy, comforting scent. The lilacs outside still perfumed the breeze slipping through the cracked window, and I hummed to myself as I stirred the pot, determined to coax him out of his shell. When he walked in, his boots thudding soft against the floor, I caught the way his shoulders softened just a fraction. His flannel hung loose, sleeves rolled up, and his hair was still a mess, but his eyes lingered on the spread. "Smells good, Grace," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying a thread of something genuine. I flashed him a smile, handing him a plate piled high with golden brown sandwiches. "Thought you could use a good meal. Sit down, let's eat." He pulled out a chair, the wood scraping the tile, and sank into it, cradling the plate in his lap. I joined him at the table, spooning soup into my bowl, and kept the chatter light. "How's that history class going? Still giving you grief?" I asked, dipping a corner of my sandwich into the broth. He shrugged, taking the bite, the cheese stretching as he pulled it away. "It's okay. Better than campus food, though." A faint smirk tugged at his lips, and I seized on it. "Oh, come on," I teased, leaning back with a grin. "Nothing beats my cooking, right?" He chuckled, a small rusty sound, and nodded. "Yeah, you win." By the time we'd polished off the meal, his eyes were brighter, the tight lines around his mouth easing. After we drifted to the living room, the candles still flickering on the table as I carried them over. The couch creaked as I sat, patting the spot beside me. Lucas hesitated, then dropped down, his knee brushing mine. We talked about nothing much, some dumb story about my day at the hardware store, a stray dog I'd seen sniffing around the yard. His laugh came easier now, low and warm, and it lifted my spirits like a rising tide. But I could still feel the weight he carried, a shadow lurking under the surface. I turned to face him, resting an arm along the back of the couch. "How are you holding up after last night?" I asked, my voice soft but direct. He looked down at his hands, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "Better, I guess," he said, his cheeks flushing faintly. "Still sucks, though." I nodded, my heart aching for him. "It'll take time. But you're tougher than this, Lucas. We'll get you there." His gaze flicked up, meeting mine, and I saw a spark of the old hymn, faint but alive. I'd fan it into a flame, no matter how long it took. The candles flickered low as we sat there, the living room bathed in a soft, golden haze. Lucas's knee still brushed mine, and I could feel the tension humming beneath his skin, a quiet storm he couldn't shake. I took a slow breath, the lilac scent mingling with the faint musk of melted wax, and turned to him. "Lucas," I said gently, my voice cutting through the stillness. "How about you show me? Not to make it weird, just so I can reassure you there's nothing wrong." His eyes widened, a flicker of panic flashing across his face. "Grace, He trailed off, his hands fidgeting in his lap, tugging at the hem of his flannel. "You don't have to," I said quick, resting a hand on his arm. "Only if you're okay with it. No pressure, just honesty. You're safe with me." He stared at me for a long moment, his breathing shallow, then gave a hesitant nod. "Okay," he mumbled, voice barely audible. He stood, his tall frame looming in the dim light, and his hands shook as he fumbled with the button of his jeans. Slowly he slid them down, the denim pooling at his ankles, and stood there, exposed and uncertain. His cheeks burned red, his gaze fixed on the floor like he was waiting for the world to crack open. For a second I couldn't breathe. He was bigger than I'd imagined, striking almost. But that wasn't what hit me. It was the way he stood, shoulders hunched, like he expected me to turn away. I swallowed, keeping my voice steady, and said, "Lucas, look at me." His eyes flicked up, wary. "There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. In fact, you're blessed. You should be proud of who you are." He shifted, his hands twitching nervously. "But what if it's too much? What if no one can—" I cut him off, my tone firm but kind. "That's not true. It's just about finding the right person. Someone who sees you for you. And until then, there's no shame in figuring things out on your own." He glanced up, uncertainty still clouding his eyes. "I tried that. Didn't work." I paused, weighing my words, then leaned closer. "Would it help if I showed you? If I helped you figure it out?" His breath hitched, his face a mix of shock and something else. Curiosity, maybe. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he stammered. "You're not," I said, my voice unwavering. "I'm here for you, Lucas, whatever you need." He nodded, slow and shaky, and sat back down beside me, his jeans still bunched at his feet. I shifted closer, resting my hand gently on his thigh, the warmth of his skin seeping through my fingers. "Relax," I murmured, my tone soothing as I moved my hand higher, careful but sure. His breathing quickened, a soft tremor running through him as I began to guide him, my touch light but deliberate. A low Pereb groan slipped from his lips, his head tipping back against the couch. I watched his face, eyes half closed, jaw slack, as the tension melted from his shoulders. It was intimate, raw, the kind of moment that stripped everything bare. I kept my movements slow, steady, letting him feel every second of it, making sure he knew this was about him, his comfort, his trust. It didn't take long. His body stiffened, a sharp gasp breaking the quiet, and he reached his release, a shudder rolling through him. His chest heaved as he slumped back, spent but calmer, the storm in his eyes fading to a quiet glow. I handed him a tissue from the coffee table, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead with a soft smile. "See?" I said, my voice warm. "Nothing to be ashamed of." He nodded, his face still flushed, but his gaze was clearer now, steady. "Thank you, Grace," he whispered, hoarse and earnest. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I replied, resting my hand on his knee. "Just know I'm here. We'll get through this together." He gave me a faint smile, the weight on him lighter, and I felt a strange mix of pride and something deeper settle in my chest, a bond tightening, fragile but real,